I set the table the way my mother taught me when I was 12 and wanted to feel older than I was. Cloth napkins instead of paper. Water in a glass pitcher with thin lemon slices floating like pale moons. A low bowl of white peonies, because peonies forgive even the harshest light. It wasn't about the food. It was about softening the room, smoothing the edges of a night I had rehearsed in my head for 4 years. 4 years is a long time to narrate to yourself. I told myself stories while I drove to the gallery and back, while I stood in front of canvases waiting for the right buyer, while I curled up on the window seat at 2 in the morning with tea that always went cold. In those stories, Landon came home from Seattle with the kind of weariness that men carry when they've built something that demanded parts of them they didn't know were available. In those stories he put his bag down and found me, and we laughed at the way time stretches and snaps like elastic. We were older, wiser, steadier. We had made it. The roast chicken in the oven clicked as the thermostat adjusted. I had made a citrus glaze because he used to like that. Sweet at the edges, brightness cutting through the fat. It was ridiculous to remember something so ordinary after so long, but my memory has its own spine. It stands up for the small things. The house in Los Angeles isn't big by the hillside standards people use here, but it sits in good light. Morning light pours into the kitchen. Afternoon light rests on the hardwood floors like a sleeping cat. I picked this place for its patience. It never pressed me to be more spectacular than I felt. On nights like this, nights made of hope that pinches, I needed a room that wouldn't show me my own nerves. On the counter my phone buzzed. A text from our attorney Rachel Owens, confirming a document we had signed months ago about a boring licensing matter for a traveling show at the gallery. I replied with a thumbs up. Rachel works quietly, precisely. Landon always said she was expensive, which in his vocabulary meant useful. It's strange what you notice in hindsight. The way certain words tilt their secret weight. Elysian frame had closed early. My assistants insisted. Go, they said, shooing me out with smiles that were part teasing, part sheltering. They had arranged the small opening we planned for next week, tagged inventory, confirmed the museum loan. We were a machine built on beauty and logistics. If I'm honest, the gallery saved me when Landon left for that first temporary stretch. He called it a sprint. It turned into a marathon with no finish line posted. I told myself people in entertainment chase work where it lives. I told myself a lot of things. The timer pinged. I pulled the pan from the oven, the heat briefly blurring my vision. I set the chicken on the board to rest and washed my hands. I tucked hair behind my ear and looked around the room like a hostess who wanted to be sure it would photograph well. None of this was for a photograph. It was for a feeling I wanted to hand him, like a coat offered at the right moment. Warm, familiar, easy. At 6:50 I changed my shirt. Not a dress that felt like theater, but a soft blouse in a color that made my skin look rested. I put on the small earrings he gave me when we still used to celebrate the day we met. I didn't wear them for him. I wore them for the girl I'd been then, the one who liked how they caught light when she turned her head. I checked the time again. The clock could have been a metronome. My breath tried to follow it. I kept moving. Plates to the table, bread warmed, water poured. The oven held a little extra heat. I let it go. Calm is a thing you do, not a thing you feel. At 7:02 the intercom buzzed. My heart did the stupid thing hearts do. I pressed the button. Yes. A voice from the gate. Isabel Monroe? Delivery. Leave it by the door, I said automatically, then smiled at myself. Old habits. Actually, I'll get it. I opened the front door to the mild evening. Los Angeles pretending it's spring even when summer waits on the next hill. Down the short path at the gate there was no courier. There was a black SUV idling like a held breath. Its headlights ticked as they cooled in place. My fingers went cold. The driver stepped out and looked at me politely, then to the passenger side as the door opened. Landon emerged with that familiar posture. Shoulders that understood cameras. A smile built for rooms where deals are signed. He looked the way men look when they've been in rooms that run on flattery and caffeine. Leaner, sharper eyes that flicker with moving targets. For one blink, all I felt was relief igniting like a match. He was here. He was alive. He was my history walking toward me. Then the back door opened. She got out carefully, as if the night might bruise if she closed the door too hard. Young mid-20s maybe. Pretty the way the industry likes, fine-boned, careful hair. Clothes that whisper brand without shouting price. She held a small girl on her hip. The child rested on her shoulder, thumb tucked in her mouth, half asleep, the small heaviness of someone who trusted gravity and the arms that fought it. I heard the smallest sound, like metal dropping in another room. It took me a breath to realize it was my own idea of my life falling somewhere I couldn't see. "Isabel," Landon said, soft, as if the night required a hush. He gestured slightly with his hand, a small pivot. "This is..." He paused. "Names make things real." "Chloe," she said quickly, gently correcting the hesitation by taking it away. Her voice had a sweetness that would mic well. "Good evening." The child stirred and lifted her head, eyes unfocused, then settling. Soft curls framed her face. She had Landon's mouth. Or maybe I was reaching for a pattern because I was drowning in blankness and needed lines. No one moved for a breath. A neighbor's sprinkler clicked on, a thin arc of water pattering against a hedge. The world, practical as ever, continued. "Come inside," I heard myself say, because the air at the gate had turned too thin. My voice was calm, the way the gallery needed me to be when an artist arrived with nerves like glass. "It's chilly." I stepped back to let them pass. The driver lifted a small suitcase from the trunk. I noticed the brand because the gallery sells small sculpture by the man who once designed luggage before he let himself become who he was. My brain, rude and loyal, logged details even while my throat tried to close. In the entryway, the scent of lemon and roasted thyme met us like a memory that has good manners. Landon's eyes flicked to the table. "You cooked," he said, not exactly pleased, not exactly sorry. An observation. A little confusion at the domesticity of a scene he hadn't rehearsed. "I thought we were eating together," I said. Not a question. I couldn't afford questions yet. Chloe adjusted the child, who now watched me with that deep, unabashed stare small children have. Her irises were the dark of wet soil. The thumb slipped from her mouth. "Hi," she said, because she had learned politeness somewhere and carried it like a ribbon. "Hello," I said. "You can sit there." I pointed to the sofa, not the dining table. It was a little boundary that made me feel like a person with arms. We settled, if you can call bodies placed in a room settled. Landon stood, then sat, then stood again, like a man in a waiting room who cannot quite accept the chairs. Chloe sank into the corner cushion with the child, the small head tucked under her chin the way birds tuck their heads under a wing when the branch sways. I poured water for everyone because my hands needed a task. Landon didn't touch his glass. "Start where you need to," I said. That, at least, I knew how to offer. I had said it to artists who brought me work they were scared to show. I had said it to donors who came with careful wallets and complicated consciences. I said it now to a man I had once married. The line felt almost kind and almost cruel at the same time. He cleared his throat. It was a sound I recognized from the pitches he practiced in our old kitchen when we still shared calendars. "Isabel, things changed up there," he began. "The project, what it asked of me, it wasn't... I didn't plan to be gone this long." He glanced toward Chloe as if borrowing her face for courage. "We met on set. It was unexpected." Unexpected is a word people use when they want to keep hold of the steering wheel, while pretending the car moved on its own. Chloe's gaze slid to me and then away, the respectful glance of someone entering a room where history sits like another guest. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said softly, as if trouble were a pet that might learn to behave if you spoke gently. "We're here because it seemed right that you hear it from us. Not somewhere else. Not from the internet," Landon added quickly, which told me there was a plan in motion somewhere, press and optics and the careful handling of announcements. He was still producing. He was still telling a story, trimming scenes, managing tone. Some part of me admired the consistency. Most of me felt very far away, as if I were in the gallery watching a video piece loop while the audio lagged. I nodded because nodding is cheaper than words. I looked at the child again. She had begun to hum, a small tuneless thread of sound that meant safety to her, or sleep almost winning. A dimple appeared when she tucked her chin deeper, and something in my chest tightened, the old ache that never quite had a name. We hadn't had children. We had said someday, until someday turned into the name of a ghost. Her name. I asked, surprising myself. "What is it?" "Aria," Chloe said, the name like a soft bell. "She's 3. Aria. Music. Of course. Landon likes words that can be photographed. Silence pooled. Not heavy exactly, more like water gathering in a place where the ground slants. I felt the world tilting and kept my feet where they were. I made dinner, I said finally, because there are moments when the only way to keep the roof on is to talk about the roof. You're welcome to eat. Or we can talk first. But either way, we'll finish this conversation tonight. Landon looked at me sharply, as if surprised to find steel under the tablecloth. Isabel. It's late for her, I said, nodding toward the child. So let's be clear and kind and quick. He exhaled and sat, choosing at last to touch the couch as if it belonged to him. He folded his hands. His knuckles looked white. I've been with Chloe for some time, he said. I wanted to tell you earlier and I didn't. I should have. He searched for the right word. The right word did not live in him. I'm sorry for the way it's landing. Landing. A plane that was always going to touch down somewhere, regardless of who was waiting on the runway. I felt something in me go still. Not dead still. Like a lake on a windless morning. It wasn't numbness. It was a tension. My mind arranged facts. He left for a project in Seattle. Months blurred into seasons, calls shortened. Messages turned into calendar links. Affection thinned into the language of logistics. Now here we were, a complete sentence at last. Subject, verb, object. I hear you, I said. My voice was even. I could have moderated a panel with it. You're with her. She's with you. There is a little girl. You've brought them here tonight to say it to my face. Chloe swallowed hard. We didn't want to hide. Not anymore, I said, and the words slid out so quietly they almost felt kind. The oven ticked as it cooled. The scent of lemon had grown faint, as if embarrassed to linger. I stood. I'm going to plate the food, I said. You can stay or you can go, but the plates will be there if you want them. And when we finish eating, I'll say what I need to say. In the kitchen I moved on instinct. Knife, board, the careful partitioning of meat from bone. I arranged everything with the precision I use when I hang a show alone after closing, those nights when I tell the walls who we are and who we're about to be. My hands remembered how to be useful. The rest of me, well, the rest would wait for its turn. Behind me the murmur of voices. A soft shoo from Chloe, a quiet question from Landon that I couldn't make out. The small girl's hum stop-started then ceased. When I carried the plates back, the child had curled into one of my throw pillows and fallen fully asleep, trust heavy as a stone. I set the plates on the coffee table. No one reached for a fork. Landon looked up. For a heartbeat I saw the boy I had met in a crowded room. Ambition like a spotlight, charm like a warm jacket he could shrug on and off. I had loved him for that jacket. I had believed there was warmth underneath it that belonged to me. I'll need your keys, I said gently. His mouth opened then closed. Surprise is a clean expression. It leaves the face simple. We can talk about logistics, I added, still calm, still courteous. But not tonight. Tonight, you'll find somewhere else to sleep. He searched my face for anger and found only the kind of mercy that ends things. He didn't know what to do with that. Most people don't. Mercy requires you to see yourself. I picked up my water and took a sip. It tasted like the person I had become while he wasn't here. Cool. Clear. Sufficient. Outside the SUV waited. The gate light glowed. Time continued its unremarkable work. We'll eat while it's warm, I said, my voice steady enough to carry us to the next hour. After that, we'll finish this. I sat. I lifted my fork. The first bite was ordinary, which felt like a small mercy too. Landon left just after midnight. No slammed doors, no raised voices, only the soft click of a lock turning from the outside. I waited until I could no longer hear the engine, then exhaled. The silence he left behind wasn't empty. It was thick, like fog over the ocean. I could almost hear the echo of what he hadn't dared to say. The house looked different in that kind of silence. Every object carried his ghost. The coffee cup he'd left untouched. The coat he'd thrown over a chair as if I might fold it later. It was funny, the small courtesies that survive betrayal. I collected the plates, scraped the food into the trash, and washed each dish as if rinsing off an old story. When I finished, I sat at the kitchen island and stared at the phone. He hadn't called. Of course he hadn't. People who end things cleanly don't need to. Still, I kept watching the screen until I laughed, quietly. a sound with no humor in it. I wasn't waiting for him. I was waiting for myself. The next morning, Los Angeles woke as it always does. Too bright, too eager to pretend nothing ever hurts here. I drove to the gallery before sunrise. The freeway shimmered with the kind of early traffic that belongs to people chasing deadlines or running from thoughts that won't let them sleep. I fit neatly somewhere in between. Elysian frame sat still in the dawn, its glass front reflecting a sky that hadn't yet decided on a color. I unlocked the door, turned on one row of lights, and let the quiet settle around me. The smell of varnish and canvas felt steadier than air. This was the one place where nothing asked me to perform. I walked through each room checking tags, frames, angles. My assistant, June, wouldn't arrive for another hour. On the main wall hung a new piece, a woman's face fractured by mirrored glass. The artist had called it Continuum. She said it was about seeing yourself from every direction at once. I stood in front of it for a long time. The reflection broke me into a dozen versions. The wife, the curator, the believer, the woman who had just told her husband to leave. My phone buzzed. Rachel Owens. Rachel. Got your message. I can meet before noon. Everything all right? Me. We'll talk in person. I typed it without thinking. Rachel didn't need details yet. She just needed to clear space in her calendar. By 10:30, I was sitting across from her in the small office above a boutique law firm in Beverly Hills. She studied me the way people study contracts, scanning for loopholes. You look composed, she said, setting her coffee aside. I've had practice. I handed her a folder. Inside were copies of property deeds, account statements, and a letter I had written months ago, the kind of letter you draft when you begin to suspect that trust has an expiration date. Rachel read in silence. Her expression didn't change, but I could see her mind move like a clean blade. When do you want to file? She asked. Today. She nodded. Do you anticipate pushback? He'll try to negotiate perception, not terms. You mean reputation? Yes. He has more of that than money. Rachel allowed herself the ghost of a smile. Then let's make sure he understands which one pays for lawyers. As she printed the preliminary forms, I caught my reflection in the glass partition. I looked calm, almost indifferent. Inside, I could feel the tectonic shift, not rage, not grief, just clarity. There's a point where pain crystallizes into focus. That's where I was standing. When I left the office, the air outside had that coastal sharpness that belongs to February. I walked to my car, paused, and texted June. Keep the gallery closed for the afternoon. Personal emergency. Tell clients I'll reschedule viewings next week. She sent back a heart and a take care. I didn't explain further. The less said, the more intact I stayed. At home, sunlight slid across the living room, catching the peonies from last night. Their petals had begun to fall, soft curls of white scattered on the tablecloth like quiet applause after a difficult scene. I gathered them gently, as if they could bruise. Then I opened the drawer where we used to keep spare keys, pulled out Landon's and dropped them into an envelope. No note. No drama. Just gravity. I called the security company, changed the code. The technician asked if I wanted to update the name on the account. Yes, I said. Isabel Monroe. Just me. When I hung up, the house exhaled. That evening, I walked down to the beach below Malibu Hills. The water looked like metal under a gray sky, and the wind carried the kind of chill that wakes you up. I thought about how endings rarely happen in one moment. They unravel through 100 small gestures. A missed call, a half-truth, a silence you decide not to fill. Behind me, the city was lighting up, one window at a time. Ahead, the horizon waited without judgment. I stood there until the tide reached my shoes. Salt touched my skin, sharp and clean. It reminded me of art, how destruction and preservation often smell the same. Tomorrow I would face the press statement, the headlines, the questions. But tonight I had the ocean, the wind, and a name that finally felt like it belonged entirely to me. By morning the news had learned my name again. The alert popped up on my phone before I could finish my first coffee. Producer Landon Pierce confirms relationship with rising actress Chloe Davenport. There was the photo. His arm around her, the kind of staged tenderness that publicists sell by the hour. The child in her arms blurred out with a polite gray square. I scrolled once, twice, then set the phone face down. The sound it made against the counter was small but final. At the gallery, June hovered near the front desk with the cautious energy people keep for funerals. "You've seen it?" she asked. "I have. I can handle the calls if you'd like." "That would be good." Clients called, reporters called, people who hadn't said my name in years suddenly remembered how. I told June to forward everything to voicemail. Then I walked through each room, turned off half the lights, and opened the skylight shades so daylight could do the work instead. Natural light doesn't lie. It only reveals what's already there. In the center hall, the mirrored portrait still hung, continuum. The cracks in its surface caught the sun like small lightning. I stood before it again, and for the first time I didn't look fragmented. I looked multiplied. At noon Rachel arrived. She wore the same expression she used in court, neutral competence dressed in black. She placed a folder on my desk. "It's official," she said. "Filed, timestamped, confirmed." "Good. He'll get served this afternoon. Expect the headlines to spin. I'd advise silence for 72 hours. I can do silence." "I know." She paused. "You want me to recommend a PR shield?" "No. Let them write. They'll get bored." Rachel studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You're better at this than most." "I curate illusions for a living," I said. "This is just another exhibit." When she left, I closed the office door and let myself breathe. The sound came out like a whisper I'd been holding for years. That evening, the gallery lights dimmed automatically, and I sat alone in the office upstairs. Outside, Los Angeles was a shimmer of gold lines and red taillights, a city always mid-performance. I watched it the way you watch an actor forget their lines, sympathetic, detached. A message from Landon arrived just after 8. "I hope you're okay. We didn't mean for it to come out like this." I typed and deleted 3 replies before settling on none. Silence is the only language some people understand. The next day, an envelope arrived by courier, his company letterhead. Inside, a polite offer to discuss asset realignment. The phrase made me laugh. Asset realignment, as if marriage were a spreadsheet. I signed the acknowledgement, sent it back through Rachel, and returned to work. By late afternoon, a man waited in the lobby, tall, with that calm alertness I associate with collectors who know exactly what they want. "Miss Monroe," he said, extending a hand. "Julian Bennett. We spoke briefly at the Whitney event last year." I remembered, the investor who'd asked thoughtful questions about emerging West Coast artists. "Of course. What brings you here?" "I read about you," he said gently, "and realized your gallery might need a partner for something larger. I'm opening a space downtown, Sterling and Bloomart's group. I'd like to discuss collaboration." The offer caught me off guard, not because of its timing but because it carried no pity. His tone was professional, clean. "Opportunity, not rescue. Come by tomorrow," I said. "We'll talk." When he left, I leaned against the desk and let the quiet fill back in. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't hurt. It hummed like the start of something forming its own gravity. That night I cooked again. Not to wait for anyone but because routine steadies the hands. As I sliced lemon for the glaze, the scent filled the kitchen. The same scent from that night, except now it belonged only to me. Outside, the ocean sent up its steady breath against the rocks below Malibu Hills. Somewhere inland, cameras flashed for people who thought they were the story. Here, in the soft light of my kitchen, I understood something simpler. Storms can be quiet when you've already learned how to stand in them. I plated the food, poured a single glass of wine, and raised it toward the window's reflection. "To endings," I said softly, "and to beginnings that don't need permission." The reflection smiled back, tired, calm, certain. The next morning, the city felt unfamiliar in the best way. I woke before the alarm, sunlight already cutting across the room in bright, clean lines. The air smelled like salt and citrus, ocean wine finding its way through the open window. I hadn't slept that well in years. Freedom, it turned out, had a quiet scent. I dressed simply, white linen shirt, dark jeans, hair pulled back. No performance, no costume. When I drove to the gallery, the world felt like it had been recently washed. Even the freeway looked new. Julian arrived right on time. He didn't bring flowers or empty compliments, only a folder and the kind of calm energy that makes conversation feel like forward motion. We sat in the upstairs office where sunlight touched the glass desk. "Sterling and Bloom is expanding downtown," he explained. "I've been following your curatorial choices. They carry restraint, clarity. I'd like to invest in something that feels more permanent than a pop-up trend. A new exhibition space. Maybe something collaborative. I listened. Not because I needed the offer, but because the tone of it reminded me what respect sounds like. What would you call it? I asked. He smiled slightly. I'd let you name it. That silence between us wasn't romantic. It was recognition. Two people who'd built things alone realizing they didn't have to anymore. That afternoon we toured a vacant warehouse near the Los Angeles River. Dust motes floated in the sunbeams like static gold. It used to be a textile factory, Julian said. Now it's waiting for a second life. I walked through each echoing corridor, fingertips grazing the walls. The space had good bones, the kind that remember purpose. I could already see it. White walls, clean light, an open floor plan for installations, an atrium for sculpture. Lumina Arts Pavilion. The name came to me before I could stop it. Light reborn from ruin. Julian caught the spark in my voice. You already see it. I see what it wants to be. He nodded. Then let's build it. The weeks that followed blurred into motion, contracts, permits, sketches, meetings. Rachel managed the legal labyrinth with her usual precision. June handled the gallery while I focused on Lumina. For the first time in months, every morning began with purpose instead of damage control. Occasionally, I'd catch sight of my name online. Another recycled headline, another speculative interview. Betrayed gallery owner rebuilds. They missed the point. I wasn't rebuilding. I was expanding. One evening, Julian stopped by with floor plans rolled under his arm. There's something you should see, he said. He unrolled the blueprints across my desk, new lighting layouts, acoustic panels, a rooftop terrace overlooking the city. I want this to feel like conversation, he said. Art between people, not above them. That's what I've always wanted too. He looked up. Then we're aligned. There was no pretense in his gaze, only a steady belief that work can be sacred if you let it be. I felt the same stillness I'd found the night Landon left, except now it wasn't emptiness, it was readiness. By April the building had transformed. The walls shone with fresh white paint, skylights polished, scaffolding gone. During the final walkthrough, Julian stopped near the entrance where the glass doors caught the sunset. You should hang something of yours here, he said. I don't show my own work. You should. People deserve to see the hands behind the vision. That night, after everyone left, I stayed behind. The gallery lights hummed softly. I unpacked one of the canvases I'd hidden years ago. Unfinished, raw, quiet. A portrait of light breaking through fog. I hung it by the entrance. Not as a statement but as a reminder. Outside, downtown glowed in muted gold. The street hummed with the kind of life that doesn't care who's watching. When the opening came, the crowd filled the space. Artists, collectors, quiet strangers who wandered in off the street. Cameras flashed, but this time they weren't aimed at gossip. They were aimed at art. Julian raised a glass to me near the atrium. To light, he said. To what comes after, I replied. Somewhere across town, I knew Landon would see the coverage. His name wasn't in any headline. Mine was. As I stood beneath the skylight, I felt the same calm that had followed the storm. A kind of peace that didn't need to be explained. Freedom didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in shapes, like light filtering through new glass, like the steady hum of voices inside a space you built with your own hands. And for the first time, I realized the story was no longer about loss. It was about creation. 2 months after the opening, Lumina Arts Pavilion had become a name people said the way they said new restaurants or weather. Casually, as if it had always been there. The city's magazines used phrases like, quiet revolution. I learned to smile politely when someone said I was an inspiration. Inspiration was never the plan. Clarity was. Every morning I arrived before anyone else. I'd walk the empty halls, touch the cool glass rail, breathe the scent of fresh paint and metal. It was the same habit I had when the first gallery opened, checking that the light still worked. One morning, as I arranged new catalogs near the entrance, June came rushing in. You'll want to see this, she said, holding out her phone. A headline scrolled across the screen. Producer Landon Pierce under investigation for financial mismanagement. The article described frozen accounts, unpaid contractors, and projects that never materialized. Pierce Media Productions was unraveling in real time. Reporters were calling it A house built on advances and apologies. For a long moment I said nothing. Then I handed the phone back. Close the news, I told her. We have an installation arriving at noon. June studied me. You're not even a little happy? Relieved, maybe. But happiness doesn't live there. And it was true. The anger had burned itself clean. What remained was distance, wide, steady, merciful. Later that week, Rachel called. He'll probably reach out, she said. They always do when the spotlight turns cold. I won't answer. I expected that, she said. Still, prepare yourself. That evening the message came. A long text, the kind that takes courage to send and cowardice to mean. I'm sorry. Everything's collapsing. I don't know who else to talk to. I read it twice, then placed the phone face down. I'd already spent too many years trying to save a man who mistook charm for character. Instead I called Julian. Are you still at the pavilion? Yes. Good. Let's add one more piece to the exhibition. The next morning we installed a small sculpture near the exit, an iron frame bent inward, holding a single shard of glass that caught the light like a trapped breath. I titled it Remnant. During the press preview a journalist asked, "What does it represent?" Transformation, I said. Sometimes things have to collapse before they show their true shape. He nodded thoughtfully, unaware of the story behind it. I preferred it that way. Weeks passed. Lumina thrived. Workshops, residencies, quiet crowds that lingered. Chloe's name surfaced once or twice in tabloids, tied to the investigation. I didn't read further. Some chapters end by being left unread. One night after closing, I stood under the skylight with Julian. The city below pulsed with its usual noise, traffic, music, laughter from rooftop bars. He looked over the railing. You ever think about what's next? Always, I said. But for the first time it doesn't scare me. He smiled, a rare, quiet curve of the mouth. Then you've done it. Done what? Built something that outlived the noise. On my drive home the road curved along the coastline. The Pacific was dark, silver-lined by moonlight. I rolled the window down. The wind was cold and clean. In the reflection of the windshield I caught my own face. Not the one from the photographs years ago, but someone older, deliberate, free. At home I lit one candle on the terrace. The flame bent in the breeze, steadying itself again and again. Freedom wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with applause or revenge. It arrived exactly like that candle, small, persistent, self-sufficient. I watched it until the wax ran low, and when it finally went out, the night stayed bright enough. The invitation arrived on a Thursday afternoon. An embossed card tucked into a plain envelope. West Coast Arts Foundation. Lifetime Achievement Honoree, Isabel Monroe. For a moment I just stared at it. My first thought wasn't pride. It was disbelief that the world had kept turning long enough for recognition to circle back around. I placed the card on my desk and sat very still. In the glass wall opposite me, the reflection of the pavilion shimmered, sunlight scattering across white surfaces like it had something to say. That evening Julian found me there, still reading the letter. You're supposed to look happy, he said, leaning against the doorway. I'm trying to process it. Process faster. They don't hand those out often. He smiled, that small patient smile of his, and crossed the room. Do you ever stop working long enough to celebrate anything? Not really. He nodded. That's what I thought. For a long moment we stood watching the light fade through the skylight. Los Angeles below us was already switching on its neon pulse. Another performance beginning. Maybe you should speak at the ceremony, he said. What would I say? Tell them the truth. It's rare enough to be art. The night of the event, the ballroom glittered with its usual confidence. People who collected success like currency, faces polished by spotlights. I wore a simple black dress and small earrings. No statement. No armor. When they called my name, applause rose like a tide. I stepped up to the podium, felt the weight of 100 eyes, and waited until the noise dissolved. Thank you, I said, for believing that art, and the people behind it, can survive change. I looked across the crowd. Somewhere near the back, I caught a glimpse of a familiar silhouette, broad shoulders, dark suit, the kind of presence that once filled every room I entered. Landon. Our eyes met for less than a second. He looked older. Not broken, just smaller. as if the noise around him had finally quieted and he didn't know what to do with the silence. I gave him a small nod, polite, final. Then I turned back to the microphone. I used to think survival meant rebuilding what was lost, I said. But sometimes it means learning how to see the light differently. Art, like life, isn't about what stays the same. It's about what remains when everything else is gone, and how we choose to shape it. Applause rose again, steady and warm. I stepped away before it could swallow me whole. Later, outside the hotel, the night smelled of jasmine and sea air. The city hummed, traffic sliding past like slow music. Julian joined me on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. "You did well," he said. "I didn't plan any of that. The best things never are." We walked without talking, two people moving through a city that had stopped feeling like a battleground. Somewhere behind us, cameras flashed. Ahead, the Pacific waited, dark and steady. Back at Lumina, I turned off the main lights and left only the skylight glow spilling across the floor. The sculpture remnant still caught the faint beam from the street, its single shard glimmering in the half-dark. I traced my fingers along the cool iron edge and thought of the night everything had fallen apart. The roast chicken, the quiet house, the sound of a door closing. The same silence now felt different. Not empty. Whole. Outside, dawn began to rise, pale and certain. I stood in the open doorway, breathing the salt air as the horizon brightened. The city behind me was already stirring. Headlines waiting to be written, stories waiting to be told. But this story, mine, had found its last line. Freedom didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering without pain. Light didn't mean escape. It meant return. And as the first sunlight reached the floor, I whispered, almost without meaning to, "I'm home."